Good.
Here, you see right here.
Thank you. I got a parking place that little parking lot is FS3, isn't it?
Where?
Right there, across from Sherry Hall.
I parked in there.
Yeah, that's what I think it is. I think I parked in there.
I parked in there before, yeah. So. Okay.
Tomorrow will be over with, right? Tomorrow will be over.
One of them. And tell me what you think about Linda. If the paper's not perfect, but she has results and she can discuss her results in a reasonable manner, do you think we should allow her to defend and then revise the paper?
Yeah, just know that you'll have to sign it.
Yeah, I do.
I'm okay with whatever you think.
Well, I just want her done. I want to facilitate that. I sent her an email that said, I'm leaving the office at 1 p.m. today. If you want to talk, but then she leaves me a message at 12:56 and wants to, and I didn't hear it because I was in the bathroom because I was getting ready to come over here and didn't take my phone with me. So she left me this kind of pitiful message, and I was like,
Don't you? Hey, ladies.
yeah.
No, I know. That even that sense.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I'm walking on it.
I know you're moving much faster than I thought you would be.
I'm getting there. But I can always tell that in the end this home right in
That
there.
makes any
Yeah.
sense. There was no
I'm good.
zero.
I'll get better.
Hey, how you doing?
Right,
I
so
was talking to her on
what's up with our stuff?
Well, looks like we've got enough of a budget where we can fund part of the trip, not the whole thing.
Okay.
So
And she called me
we
back
are
and said,
thinking we can pay half if you want to pay half.
there is the
And
entire journal
split
Is
it
that
down
with
middle.
the?
on the WKU website
Half of whatever. you
Have
want.
whatever we want to do.
Yeah.
called
All right.
Qualitative
We can do
Research.
I'll go back to my chair with that.
Go there, pick a phenomenology study,
Okay.
and read.
And I don't know that we'll always do it.
Well, hey, I don't care. That's good.
Exactly.
It doesn't have to be on
That's just one.
Hello. Sorry, how you doing?
Hey, how are you?
Good. So we don't know about.
Yeah, they're not,
Just the names.
they're
Get
not
my seat back here out of the way.
I know. We had a
CHS readmissions, but not
I think that's Mara's record.
Huh?
and
That's Mara's stuff.
But she
yeah,
does.
hey, you still want this account? We always do that.
She always hides that back in
Pay
the corner.
exactly what we're.
It's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I like these chemicals where I get to just sit counting
So
Yeah.
Don't see.
out of the way.
I don't blame you.
Right?
I chair like three,
Count.
so it's nice to be out of the way.
Yes.
I tell you, I'm on this one. I'm on,
You know, having gone through my account, and they would sometimes email back, sometimes not. And
policy
finally,
committee for the grad council.
Oh, yeah, the policy part?
And I'm on,
Steve's on that.
yeah.
what's going on with your account?
And then I'm on
Additional account.
Yeah,
Okay, so that said it'll take 7 to 10
Faculty
days.
handbook
Started
committee.
last
Oh,
week,
boy.
so I hope
Yeah.
hopefully any day now. So I'm
just got off the IRB.
I wanted to talk with you
Yeah.
before
like I
I.
said,
Well, I mean, that's an essential. They're all essential.
You gotta
I'd
get
rather be out
these
the handbook
results
first
from
my
the
style.
you gotta get the discussion.
Reading carefully and
It's
but,
Yeah.
it's very tough.
The
who
same thing.
used to be a real expert here, like Retta
Yeah,
Poe.
the same
Do you know
thing.
Retta?
That sounds.
Very well, I know I'm
Right.
University of
She would,
Wait a minute, there needs to be a period.
she would just, I mean, I wish I had an editor that would help me as much as Retta did.
Scott Street and
Evaluate.
I forgot about Scott. I wish I could name him a long time.
Scott.
Yeah, I know Scott.
Come on, who's
How
the,
how did this fit into the
kind
domain?
of promote it. So I kind of got
Here's what the
some
definition
Good.
is, demographics in the demographic
really
domain.
hit what you're looking for.
So,
Drew,
how, it's not making
Because that's
those
one of
three,
the ones I know.
those three,
Yeah.
were all on the curriculum committee, I was on, I said, oh my, wait a minute,
Yeah.
this
How did you
doesn't,
make that
what does it mean?
I think
Yeah.
Scott was famous for that, what does it mean? I said, come on now.
All right.
Like Clinton,
All right. Will do.
Yeah, well-
Thank you.
His thing was, it doesn't mean that. That's what his,
Yes,
it doesn't mean that.
I'm using this.
No, I'm sitting back here in the back alley, actually.
That's your- that-
I can't
You're a good little
vote.
Baptist.
Yeah, well, that's right, I'd be in that back row. I'd be in that back row.
Good place to be.
Yeah. Actually, in church, I got some front where I was knocked out.
I did
Gotta be,
buy this, all this.
unfortunately, up in the front there.
Good, that gives me room in the back.
You know what I mean?
My wife prefers the
You
back.
worked here for 2.5 years and you.
Good.
We are.
Better than I deserve.
Have a doctor. That's what my head is saying too. I said everything. Is there a water fountain around here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I gotta do. I did it before, but then I took them out, some changes.
Are you saving this?
Can't wait. Well, I was following my and I encountered them, and I said, you know what? I could foresee possible.
I have the ones in the dark, but that's better than a corneal articulation.
But thank you for bringing it. So.
Shouting and screaming. Got to be physical location. So, down at the tower. And so, they encountered you.
5. Yeah, 5. Yeah, I read stories, why, I don't know anything other than just read stories.
I said,
Yeah, exactly. Well, 5's a lot. Yeah, I mean, 3's, couple.
but yeah, they took. And,
The big, I was at the publication, and you can watch it online and look.
But today's best may be different than yesterday's.
Newspapers, like, you see what's going on.
About 4 weeks now.
You see people looking at that, next one down is 3.
Gum and
So you're right in the middle of that, Were you inciting some of that?
they can wait till after the
Okay.
meeting.
you know what?
Yeah, it was a good. I'm sure they won't come mud.
Oh, I'm sure they'll.
Yeah, good. I like your start.
Thank you, my sister brought it back.
Hey, hey, come down and see it.
How you doing there?
Drive you crazy.
No, because my niece, self-taught me.
Hey, what's this? Hey,
Like one of those dance samples.
you're so loud.
Don't have to do that.
Yeah, they're on yellow side.
Yes, you miss it.
Yellow, that's right.
And then that way you don't.
You're doing well, how are you? Let's go.
Yeah, like, I was, you know, where.
No, I'm in the engine row, right? So if they shoot, they know you're winning, not me.
How you doing today?
My friend in
I'm not
church
good with the.
Oh, you're not.
always wears these great scarves.
Not that I'm worried about it. Be careful.
Says the key to safety.
Ryan, how you
So
doing?
when I try it, it still falls. So.
How's life?
Good. Interesting.
I'm not I say fly.
My life is, no, it's not there. My neck.
We've been working on GMP. Thank you.
I just met with Nick. I know Don was here last time.
Nick and April work together, and we got one draft out. Yeah, wouldn't waste a single thing. There's no waste, no filter. Everything's there.
I thought it should be
Just never know. What are the agendas?
You said that last time.
I wasn't here last
Most of
Let me tell you what.
That's right.
I just like.
She said short, and it's short got very long.
It's all right, I don't want to have
They do, and it's time.
You've been rising.
I mean, on it. I'm just
I think it was in Manchester.
no problem.
You
kind of cool.
And Mike said I made you like that for him.
Welcome, and we're happy to have you.
Thank you. She's handling.
My aunt.
I'm a economics program.
Bag.
Nice to see you.
She's there. We're happy she rolls up at my.
Okay, yeah.
That's right, yeah.
So you sit anywhere?
I just don't want
I get that.
the front door. I'm so sorry. My son said my bless. I'm so sorry.
Because you're really good friends with Dr. Durant, right?
Oh, there we go. Yes.
I thought so, but I wouldn't.
And if you're on her Facebook now,
I'm actually not friends with her on Facebook.
because I post all the time.
I think I
Yeah, there is. I do. I'm not gonna say. Oh, you guys. Somebody already had me. I was gonna go.
I'm ready for life.
I think we can find ourselves.
Good to see you. When's your birthday? I'm still counting mine.
For student representative for applied economics program.
Yep.
So your one part is that all that?
Yes.
Yes, I did not have your name this time, so I don't have your name tag, but I will by next month, okay? There'll be a, see how much I'm pointing us, there'll be a sheet here, so it's like, your name won't be on it because it says,
I could just ask her.
write it in. That's probably for next time.
I just am glad I don't stay.
Here, you want this forward?
That's the way, yeah.
I wasn't smart. I wasn't going to.
I had it, I saw it. I lost my
It's Marge. It was with next week.
We have essentially class. How are you? I'm good. How are
Okay, where are you, Okay, I'm applied economics.
I'm sure I'll find it.
Really? Yeah, I'm a graduate assistant. Oh, okay.
They'll go home and become players. I'm no good at it online.
Yeah, she had a good workout, that's what they.
I would make it a bit.
Yes, they probably thought I was really losing some weight. But hello, she was fat.
Oh, okay. And she said, oh, okay, because I already checked with you. Layla, checked yet?
My first night. It's not fake. I'm a good night.
I woke up this
I got to think about it. I was like, I just saw you.
Stay away.
Occasionally.
Okay.
Occasionally it works, but occasionally.
Not pretty.
I used to be with you. Go to sleep. Didn't have it after. Those chocolate bars.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. And I can sleep at night.
Okay. I just got to say,
Let's have it.
Nobody connect.
No lie.
I think it's.
No, she did. I did. Yes.
If I haven't,
So,
I see. What is that?
I need that.
confirm her.
Which we can do this.
I don't sort of. My first week cycle was about 3 hours. My second week cycle was about an hour. After that, it's about an hour. You know, somewhere in between 5 and 6 hours. When I'm awake, it's hard.
I mean, he can
Going.
whole thing.
What if? What if?
Oh, yeah.
She said she's already gone back.
Yep. And unfortunately. So, yes.
I like that.
I mean, I know what you're saying.
That's NCA.
That's what it is.
Are we ready?
Am
Am I supposed to push a button? She's got it. Will you?
Don't push me
No,
back.
but didn't. How's everybody?
Surviving.
Ready to get started? We have the sign-up sheet going around. Please, members sign next to your name. If you are an alternate, please print your name, and yes, please sign in also. We've got pretty much full house today and a pretty long agenda, so good to go ahead and get started. So if I can have a motion to approve the minutes, so we had a chance. Second. Any discussion? My thanks to Kristen for doing what I hear was an awesome job last month and managing a long meeting. Thank you. Any discussion, comments, questions? All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Thank you. Up next, we will start with our committee reports. We have a report from the policy committee, and we have Dean Evans from the College of Education who would like to speak. So, Kristen, you want to start and then...
Okay. So in your packet on attachment 1, you'll see the current policy on conditional admission and the proposed draft policy. The current policy is just 2 sentences. It says students who are conditionally admitted must successfully complete the conditions that are prescribed. Those are usually prescribed by the departments. And then students who do not meet the conditions will be dismissed. Simple enough, right? The proposed draft policy on conditional admission says that if you don't meet the university program and admissions requirements, academic program review of the student's records indicates the likelihood of the success. Conditional admission may be granted by the dean of the graduate school upon recommendation of the program. So it's just more specific. It does nearly the same thing as the first sentence, just more specific. And then that the conditions will be specified in the admissions notification. They must be fulfilled upon completion of 12 hours of coursework. 12 hours of coursework, whether graduate or undergraduate. Programs are responsible for monitoring the success or the progress of the students, and if they don't meet the conditions, upon the 12 hours, they will be dismissed. So that's what we're looking at. Okay, so those current policy, draft policy. We would probably need to entertain a motion to approve this policy change so that we can open the floor for discussion. Thank you, Lance.
Do we have any discussion?
I think Dana does.
Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, Shannon. Hopefully you can all hear me. There's a couple of pieces related to the proposed policy that I think are a little bit problematic. And what I want to do is go back to what is currently in the catalog right now. 2.75 in and of itself is not problematic, because there's also a piece within the admissions process where you can have an alternate admission process in terms of admission to graduate studies. We've got a group of students, it's not huge, it's the MAT degree, option 6. These individuals have to be full-time employed in the school district in order to be in option 6. Those folks cannot be conditionally admitted. They have to be admitted in good standing. These are typically non-traditional students who may be in their 40s or 50s. Oftentimes they're in the hard-to-fill areas in our schools. The STEM areas in particular could be the world languages. It could be any particular position in a school district. It is possible that those folks will not have a 2.75 overall GPA. The state allows us to admit in good standing 3.0 in the last 30 hours. That was specifically put in for adult learners. We can use it at the undergraduate or graduate level. It's on programs leading to initial certification. School districts will not, should not, hire someone that is conditionally admitted because they're expected to be admitted in good standing. If they are conditionally admitted, they're under contract with the school district. If something happens, they've got an employee on the books who can no longer be in our program. You've got to be in our program to be in the option 6. And it is a small program. And it's only supposed to be those who are looking for positions that are hard to fill. From everything I can tell, if you look at the 2.75, programs are allowed to have an alternate admission process, such as the 3.0 in the last 30 hours. It will accommodate that particular group of students. I cannot think of any other program that we have where it would be problematic. If you're in the MAT traditional, you are not employed by a school district. But those two on the option 6 have to come together. You've got to be employed and you've got to be admitted to a program in good standing. There has been some conversation that, well, we can admit him in good standing. The graduate school would conditionally admit him. What that means, there's 2 different separate letters floating around. That can be problematic for everyone involved. So from my end, we already have on the books the 2.75, which I feel is important. We've got a group, the state will permit us on the 3.0 in the last 30 hours under the alternate admission process. If we put those 2 pieces in place, that group of students that I think will be negatively impacted, could be negatively impacted on the proposed policy is what raises concern on my part. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions or comments?
Now, am I reading this correctly, that unless the program area recommends conditional admission, that's the only condition under which they're going to get conditional admission, if the program area recommends it? Is that right?
You're asking me?
I'm asking
Kristen.
Kristen.
If the program area recommends conditional admission, then
Then it can be granted by the dean of the graduate school.
it goes to the dean of the graduate school for approval.
But the dean of the graduate school is not going to give them conditional admission unless the program area recommends it.
That would be my sense, but that would be up to the dean of the graduate.
That's not a problem.
Unless their GPA is less than 2.75, right? Then, is that what you're asking, Marge? Under what condition the dean of the graduate school?
But it says that only unless, or at least the way I'm reading it, only unless the program area recommends conditional admission, will it be granted.
Right, but if it's below the GPA minimum for the graduate school, they'll be denied, or they'll be conditionally admitted. There won't be an option. My understanding is that there's not an option for full admission under that scenario.
Right. So if the program area has denied admission,
No, if the program area accepts the student in recommends to fully admit the student, but the student has less than a 2.75 GPA, the current admission standards for the graduate school are that student will be admitted, but it will be a conditional admission because their GPA does not meet the minimal standards.
but if the student does not meet the minimal standard and the program area denies their admission, that sticks.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then
The graduate
No
school
problem.
doesn't admit people independently.
program area just doesn't recommend it.
2.75. If they're below 2.75, they're automatically conditionally admitted.
So they're automatically
Yeah.
conditionally?
No, if the
They're saying
program-
no.
But if the
That's what I
program,
wanted to clarify.
if the program wants to admit them without a condition, they just want to fully admit the student so that they don't have to meet a condition, but the student has a GPA less than 2.75. The graduate school will, because it doesn't meet the minimum standards established for the graduate school, will still admit the student, but it will be a conditional admission.
But if the program area denies admission, that's it.
That's it. Yeah.
That's it.
That's what I'm asking.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if they're less than 2.75,
Then we're going to deny admission.
No.
He wants to accept them?
Yes.
if it's a chemistry major with a 2.70, but a 3.0 in the last 30 hours, I would want that person admitted in good standing, because schools cannot find chemistry teachers. Less than 50% of schools in the Commonwealth of Kentucky have a fully certified physics teacher. So, I mean, we got some hard to fill slots out there that this will work against, and it will create a problem with some of our school partners, because they can't find the teachers.
But you're saying this is a very, very small group.
It is a small group.
How many?
I can't, in our entire MAT, we've probably got 20 right now. And some of those are Chinese folks. There'll be special ed in there. There's going to be some sciences, could be modern language, could be in English. It is small in terms of groups. And the chances of us in the future getting a lot is going to be even slimmer, because the admission requirement to professional ed is a 2.75 overall, or a 3.0 in the last 30 hours, and they're going to be moving. You can't get certified unless you got a 2.75 overall or 3.0 in the last 30 hours. But we've got a group out there that probably for a period of time that we're not going to be able to serve their career goals nor the needs of school districts. We're kind of in an awkward situation right now. And I know, and some of you can probably think back when you were in college, 2.75 today is not what a 2.75 used to be. And so if we've got folks in their 40s and 50s and been out for a while, that 2.5, 2.6, especially in STEM areas, that's not a weak GPA.
Do you have a sense for how many of your applicants who have 3.0 in the last 30 hours have below 2.75 cumulative?
We have not looked at that, because we don't look at the 3.0 in the last 30 hours unless they don't have a 2.75 overall. And we do not have a large number at the undergrad level. I can't tell you how many we've had at the graduate level. We had one this fall that was very likely, but we had not received all their transcripts at the last minute. The last transcript came in, and we could get a 2.75 overall. We have to count graduate and undergraduate coursework for them.
Eric, I had an amendment I was prepared to propose here, but I'm going back to what Dean Evans stated. I went back to the catalog to read the alternate admission policy as it stands. And it says, this additional information is considered to be an academic college alternate admission committee and may result in one of the following three recommendations. Full admission to the graduate school, conditional admission, parentheses, full admission to be based upon performance in specified undergraduate/graduate coursework. That's what he's doing there. I think that's what he's saying is 30 in the last 30 hours, or denial of admission. So, based upon what that's saying on the conditional admission, it's basically saying full admission based upon that specified within the current policy. So doesn't that sort of give him that latitude? I'm asking. Sam, I'll be honest with you. I've been one of the proponents kind of against that, not really fully understanding your issues. I'm just going to be honest with you. I've kind of been like, why are we lowering the standards? I'm just trying to play devil's advocate here now and say, that's what it says now. So does he not have that latitude to do this?
We haven't seen any applications that fit that bill yet. And so at this point, we've not tested it. But my view is that whatever policy we come up with for admission should be applied uniformly. And the way we're talking about theoreticals, and I don't see at this point what a big crisis is.
And Colette, just to clarify, Marge, because Colette clarified for me, it's that if there is a recommendation from a program that a student be fully admitted and the student has less than a 2.75 cumulative GPA, then the graduate school will not automatically admit them conditionally. They will send it back to the program and say.
Have a conversation with the program.
And then the program will have then at that point the option to either just deny the student or to admit them conditionally. But the way it stands now, the admission standards for the graduate school, the requirements are if the student has a cumulative undergraduate GPA of less than 2.75, they will not be fully admitted to the program. They will be denied or conditionally admitted.
What does it say about the vetting process for that alternate?
It doesn't. And really it says undergrad/graduate coursework. So I think that's where the debate is. I mean, I think Dean Evans is saying the last so many hours of undergraduate work, but this is saying undergrad/graduate coursework. So.
But if he wanted to establish a sort of permanent alternate pathway, what would be does it say what the policy process is for doing that? Or is each person
No, this says some departments may have more specific guidelines on alternate admission materials, but it doesn't give a generalized.
What are you reading now, Kurt?
Catalog.
What page, sir? What page? Are you in the undergraduate catalog?
No, I'm in the graduate catalog, but I am in the last one though. You got a new one out there? Has it changed?
Are you?
I'll go back.
16, 17, the year we're in. I don't know what you're looking at.
There's only like 30 out here. I found the one on the Western Kentucky University, but evidently it wasn't.
So Colette, you have every word memorized and you can pick that out?
She has
Too good to me. You know that?
How is alternate admission currently applied? How is that currently utilized?
has
I've been here 4 years.
Yeah, we don't do it, but the way let me just tell you how I think about it if we were to encounter that situation of an alternate admission, is that departments can devise lots of admission processes based on their own standards. In your case, based on the EPSB statutes. And can recommend admission based on that to their programs. But if, for example, in the sort of hypothetical we're talking about, a student is recommended for admission by alternate admission or by any other standard, such as GAP scores, if they don't meet the university's minimum admissions, they will be offered conditional admission, regardless of the recommendation of the department.
Or
Since
even
that's
if
the
he goes
university
through
standard.
the alternate admissions process, they really have admissions. So would it be possible to develop, say, some online didactic material that a conditional admit could work through that would increase your academic skills, that wouldn't be extra coursework, or addition, that would be a condition of admission, that would speak to those chemistry students, but also speak to the conditional admission requirement?
I think you would have to develop a much clearer policy about that. Because at this point, I think the policy about the university's admission standards and how they apply to students are pretty clear. So, I'm kind of reticent to go down the pathway of creating lots of policies with lots of loopholes for different programs.
Well, I don't mean as a policy, I mean, what if they made that their condition? Like a summer bridge program.
Mm-hmm.
So they develop a summer bridge program for these students of sorts.
Well, I think we're talking about bridge programs a little later in our program. I think that the graduate council would have to approve something like that as a curriculum.
Even if they listed it as a condition? Not to offer graduate credit for it or undergraduate credit for it. It's just.
Well, again, we're talking about an admission process or evaluation process devised by a program, which then has to, the admission of any student has to meet the standard of the program and meet the standard of the university. And those two things, according to our policies now, the university standards are 275 GPA. And regardless of what the department devises as its own admission standards, that's the way I read the policy now. So, and frequently, departments have much higher admission standards than 275 for their program.
But
So
does
again,
anybody have a conditional admissions requirement that isn't coursework, that is something else? So that's what I'm talking about. So what do those look like?
Writing center, completion writing
Yeah,
center.
take 6 credit hours as a graduate student and earn a certain GPA to demonstrate academic capability, all kinds of.
So would that be a possibility for the chemistry
But
students?
Sam's problem is one that I think is important to his college, and that's that when there's an admission to the university that is conditional, and there's an admission to the program that is not conditional, that is direct, he sees that as a very important conflict that disadvantages the student. And I don't see it that way, but I understand his concern about that issue. My thought about this was when a student is fully admitted according to EPSB standards to your programs, why would that student not present that letter to his employer?
You've got literally 2 letters floating around. You're going to have one from the graduate school and one from the professional ed unit. Those 2 letters are in conflict with one another. And
Not
you
really.
have,
I mean, not really, because you're saying they're in good standing in your program. It's just a graduate school saying that they're conditionally admitted until they complete, 6 hours with the B average, right?
well, but if you've got an employer out there, they're wanting someone who is admitted in good standing, period.
But if it's
Because they're under contract with that school district. And if, from what I'm picking up, what comes out of the graduate school supersedes what occurs in a program area, then the letter that we would produce would not have any positive impact whatsoever on that. And these are non-traditional students who have tremendous work experience that they're going to bring that we oftentimes don't see. Yeah.
Is it clear in the catalog now what the connection between conditional admission and alternate admission?
They look in the
Because
copy.
they look like 2 separate sections. So I guess I'm not sure, right, so if a program has alternate admission, how does this all fit together?
It's separate, but under alternate admission, it says applicants who do not meet admission requirements may request alternate admission whereby additional academic or experiential learning is considered by the academic program in the graduate school.
So if they're admitted alternate, are they fully admitted?
It doesn't tie that.
And again, I would say that, we're talking, because we've never seen a case like this, alternate admission, that if a student is admitted by the program by alternate admission based on maybe a portfolio of experiences or something like that, then that student would be conditionally admitted if they don't meet the university's basic GPA standard. And one of the things about about conditional admission is that this is not a lower status of admission. That student is in good standing at the university. They're not a lesser category of student. But it gives the program and it gives the university the opportunity to redress what with someone who has low GPA and perhaps missing courses in their background, it gives them the option to remediate problems that would obviously come up in a situation where a student has a low GPA, for example.
Two things. And as I read the current conditional admission policy, Dean Evans' concerns are not, if we go back to that policy, his concerns still stand.
That's right.
Passing this policy doesn't solve your troubles. And so then my other question is conditional admission something that's only looked at like once a semester? So if the programs monitor it, if Sam does some kind of online didactic, some kind of study skills thing that students who are conditionally admitted could work through, and it only takes them a month, can they prompt Colette and she'll change the admission standards relatively quickly and they'll be fully admitted?
As long as the conditions allow for that, yeah.
Yeah. So one compromise, one solution might be to come up with something that they could work through fairly quickly, fairly easily.
The key is we have to report the GPAs. These have to be entered in Frankfurt. Whatever's on their transcript is what we've got to enter in when they're admitted. So any work that we would do on the side to, quote, enhance their supposed skills is not going to show up. They will only accept a 2.75 overall or a 3.0 in the last 30 hours.
But what I'm saying is they would change the admission as soon as they work through it. So if it only took them 2 weeks.
We wouldn't change the admission status. We would say the conditions of admission have been fulfilled. The conditions.
And then it would begin fully
There wouldn't be any
admitted.
working through it, because it's the last 30 hours.
Lance, did you have something?
Yeah, it was sort of related to what Kristen was saying. It seems like what we're talking about is alternative admission when our policy that we're considering is conditional admission. I'm not sure how, it sounds to me like alternative admissions is separate from conditional admissions. So we could, this policy is to be considered independent of that? Yeah?
I have a question. Kirk, as you were looking at that alternate admission, it sounded like Eric was explaining it as a program admission decision, but I think I heard him say program and graduate school. So I'm not sure that the alternate admission that I heard him read, which is new to me, I don't know anything about this, isn't something that just applies to a program's demand, but rather the graduate school too. It sounds like you're under that.
Well, any application process is one that's two-step. It's the program and the graduate school, no matter what process you're talking about.
I understand that, and my assertion here is that this alternate admission applies to the graduate school, not necessarily the program. So not that it's
The policy does not say, the policy does not in any way say that a program can devise admission standards that simply negate the university's admission standard. It doesn't say that, because this two-step process is still there.
Well, I was just going to say that in social work, in the traditional program, which are students that do not have a social work undergraduate degree, that our admission standards say a GPA of 2.75 in the last 60 hours. And then our students that have a degree in social work, an undergraduate degree, it is a 3.0 in the last 60 hours. And I don't think we've ever, and if they're below, if the social work students in advanced standing are below that 3.0, they just don't get admitted, period. Because we want them to have higher skill level because it's a 9-month program versus a 2-year program. But those students that are traditional, if they're below that 2.75 in the last 60 hours, then we have them apply for alternate admission and then we give them conditions. But I don't think we've ever had a difficulty between the program and the graduate school with that system that I can remember. Can you remember?
Because you set conditions.
Because we set conditions.
And that goes
That
along
goes
with
our
what the
accrediting, that goes along with what our accrediting body really wants
Yes.
typically.
And what the dean's concerns, and correct me if I'm restating it incorrectly, is that having conditions is what he is trying to avoid from the standpoint of this pool of students. But going back to what the point that Lance raised, these are two different issues in terms of the policy before us, the ability of the policy before us to address this issue. It's not going to be able to do that. what is the will of the body on this with regard to exploring options to address?
Can we send it back to committee and then work on it?
This came from a committee that worked on it, and it seems like we've got current policy, we've got a proposed policy. The proposed policy has gone through the committee process, and I haven't heard really a suggested change or actually either a view on whether to reject or accept the proposed policy.
Well, then,
So-
right, voting it down doesn't fix it.
Right.
We still
So
have the
that's-
current policy that's the problem.
Yes, and we're dealing with two different issues. So
Right.
I think, Marge, in terms of what, and correct me if I'm putting words in your mouth also, but are you asking that we refer to policy committee this new issue of how to address, is there a solution to the concerns that the dean has expressed?
Yes.
Do we have a motion to that?
So moved.
Second? So we'd like to phrase the motion. Motion to refer to the
Send it
policy
back to the
committee.
committee. So
Well, we're not sending back. We're not sending back something because this is something new.
I suggest work on the current motion, then make a new motion.
Okay, that's probably the better thing. All right, can you hold that for just a minute?
Okay.
Yes, Sylvia.
The new policy seems to restrict appeals, which is really counter to other policies that we have. Students typically have the opportunity to appeal. And I wondered why this one strictly says no appeal. And it is counter also to page 32 of our current catalog underneath academic standing, which clearly states that if you're a conditional admitted student, you can't.
Okay, Colette. So we have a concern, and we're gonna get back to Marge's issue in a minute, and we're gonna go ahead and move forward specifically on the language that we have of conditional draft changes to the conditional admission policy before us. That's attachment 1, and the concern that the wording as is does not address. It denies appeal. It removes the opportunity of appeal for students. So Colette.
So just to address that concern, that was added because we're trying to streamline, because we know you all dislike paperwork as much as we dislike paperwork. And the students will have, let's say you're a student and you've been dismissed for failing conditions. If the student appeals, they'll go through, getting signatures, rationale, you're going through the whole thing. And at the end of that process, they will have to reapply to the program anyway. So this way, the student will reapply to the program. The program again will get to review that student, say yay or nay. So the reapplication will be like an appeal because the student will be appealing back to that same program. You can look at what conditions were on them previously, if they met them, if they didn't, how you felt about their outcome. Maybe you'd want to revise those. Maybe the student failed the conditions so horribly that you don't want to admit the student back to your program. So it puts the ball back in the court of the faculty, and you would have their full packet back in front of you rather than a single appeal piece of paper and us all email back and forth and writing the same thing. So it's really an effort to put the students, the process and the student's academic record back in front of the faculty fully.
But I'm not sure it allows them the opportunity to really appeal that decision. I guess, once again, SACS really encourages, actually it's a federal guideline underneath SACS, that a student would have the opportunity to appeal a situation. And it says on page 32 that students who are conditionally admitted and fail to meet the conditions will be dismissed and may follow the standard appeal process described above.
What's the heading that's under?
It's under the academic standing section of the current graduate catalog.
Okay.
And I guess as a student, I hear a lot of student ombudsmans. Actually, I've spent most of my day doing that today. And many times it's just a miscommunication between the parties, to be quite honest with you, that we're able to solve it without going through the formal process. That's always my goal, is to help the students solve a challenge. And I can't say that they're all that way, but many times we just, like today, I've had a rough day, but I can go home knowing that it helps move through our crazy process that we have on this campus. Which Tiffany's up on, my dad.
And I guess there'd be an admissions fee too if they had to.
No, there's no
Okay.
fee for any
No fee.
second application.
Okay.
We say that every week.
Sorry.
Well, so I would
Oh, that's good.
propose a friendly amendment to delete that last sentence to make it in keeping with the policy Sylvia mentioned on page 32. To delete the last sentence.
So moved.
Second.
Since we're taking,
Who made that motion?
Oh, Carl did. Thank you.
Somebody's not.
I did.
Lance.
so,
Discussion? Well, I would just like to say this, I'm not writing this down for the record, but I handle appeals in the graduate school, and I've done over 200 of them this year, just with academic standing, not a single one conditional admission. So I just want to be clear that this kind of doubling of the appeal workload is going to delay appeals, so I just wanted to be sure that you all as faculty know that.
It would turn appeals into reapplies, right?
The opposite. You took that line out, so they will have the
Oh, right,
opportunity
right.
to appeal.
But I think Sylvia makes a good point that we need to make sure our policies are consistent and that SACS does encourage us to have a general ethic of having options, having recourse for students.
That's right.
And it's totally fine, I just wanted to relay that.
And there are, within that, there are students who if their appeal was successful, they wouldn't have to reapply, right? They would just be,
We'll have to go
they
through
would
the
demonstrate,
process.
they demonstrate that they actually did meet the conditions.
But they're
No,
not obligated
no.
to appeal at all. So if they talk to their graduate advisor upon dismissal and the graduate advisor says, just reapply, they can skip the appeal altogether.
Why would a student appeal a conditional? If they've been dismissed because they didn't meet the conditions, what would be their grounds for appealing that, other than, well, no, we actually did meet the conditions?
Is there time limit to stay out after dismissal before you can reapply?
I went on maternity leave, I couldn't get it done.
They might say life circumstances during that time were exceptional, and that's the reason that they did not meet the conditions.
But why bother if you have to reapply at the end of it anyway? So why not, why wouldn't a graduate advisor just say to them, skip the appeal, reapply?
And I guess that's my thing, is like, under what situation could they appeal dismissal because they didn't meet the conditions? It's either they didn't meet the conditions and they were dismissed.
And I can make
For why that happened.
Go ahead.
You're making a human case for
That happened.
Sure, but that wouldn't result
My
in
husband was in Iraq, and now I'm his caregiver.
Well, sure, but
Semester.
why
But
go
they would
through
still
the
have
loop?
to reapply.
They would still have to reapply.
Yeah,
Right,
they
but
wouldn't
then
be.
they're sharing that case of why I'm just not something on a piece of paper.
Okay.
Well, they can do that as
Because
part of
people
their
are more than the paper that we see the numbers on.
Okay, but I wouldn't do it if I were a student. I'd want, especially if my husband were away in Iraq, I'd be busy.
So why don't you just go ahead and vote on the friendly amendment?
Okay, so we've got one amendment to the policy to be considered.
The ideal
Vote on the
is
amendment before
Yeah,
we
we've gotta-
entertain another amendment. Okay, so those in favor of the amendment to strike the last line of the revised wording, the graduate school will not consider appeals of dismissal due to failed conditions of admission. Students will be required to reapply. That's to be stricken. That's what the amendment is at this point.
If I'm allowed to do so, before we vote on that, I've been following discussion kind of back and forth, and I came in just a little bit cold. Would it be possible to summarize, I mean, you just summarized the motion, but exactly what, for lack of a better word, that is doing or means?
Sylvia pointed out that on page 32 of the catalog, it already states that if students are dismissed after not meeting the conditions of their admission, that they will be allowed to appeal that decision. So if we pass this policy as it is, we will have two contradictory policies.
Okay, that's just what I was looking for. Thank you.
Okay, so all in favor, is that good? Any more? All in favor of the amendment striking the language, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say aye. Okay, so we have stricken that. Now I understand we're entertaining another amendment.
Yeah, I'd like to propose one amendment, which really is kind of outside now, since you're going to take this issue for Dean Evans back and kind of consider it separately. But just for looking at the policy, it struck me that there's no real, it says all conditions of admissions must be fulfilled before the condition of 12 hours, but it doesn't really specify, like, well, what if a program doesn't specify conditions? Because it really should be the program specifying conditions. And so I was just like to propose an amendment that states, for any student for whom a program does not specify approved criteria for conditional admittance, the default minimal condition shall be a 3.0 GPA in the first 12 hours of graduate coursework. Basically, it's just, if the program doesn't, if there's not one, we have to have some kind of a default to kind of catch that. And basically, it's pretty liberal because you're saying you got 12 hours. It's even better than 6. You got 12 hours of graduate coursework to make sure you get that 3.0. So.
We have a motion to add an amendment, and Kirk had asked, we circulated that language, so you all should have seen that prior to. Do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have any discussion?
I have very serious concerns about this because it combines the conditional admission policy with academic standing policy. And that means that I may have a student that completed 12 hours that's conditionally admitted, and they met in the same semester, they could meet their conditions and have a 2.8. So I'm going to automate this, so I would end up dismissing this student.
Say that again. I'm not sure how that.
So let's say I finished the term in December 2016, and I've completed 12 hours and I'm conditionally admitted. So we're going to be running audits to dismiss people who have the conditional admission tag that don't have a 3.0. So they have a 2.8. And next week, somebody calls and says the student met their conditions. So we're applying a academic standing policy that's different than what all other graduate students get. So if you go on probation, you go on probation first, and then you get 9 hours to bring that up, your GPA up. And what we're establishing here is a separate academic standing policy for conditionally admitted students. Is that what we're intending to do?
Well, our understanding was that conditionally admitted students don't go on probation.
Absolutely they do. All graduate students are covered by academic standing.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, did I remember that wrong? Okay. All right, then that is different from what we had discussed previously. Was that if they, because that's what we had discussed earlier, was an understanding that conditionally admitted students don't go on probation.
All students fall under academic standing policy.
My initial thought about this policy was the same as yours, that we should have a default, but I didn't understand the situation right.
I didn't understand that part.
Well, what she's saying is that we have a policy that says students have the option.
No, I'm just saying I didn't understand that until now. I'm just saying.
Oh, okay.
And
so
we discussed it as being different.
Yeah, we would.
Initially, we were under a different impression about what.
The confusion that this might introduce is that departments and the graduate school may not agree on the conditions, or there may be no conditions, but I think that's a lesser evil than having two policies.
Yeah, I agree. So can I ask to
Let's vote it down. When's the last
Okay,
time we
vote it
voted
down.
something down?
He wants to have a day on mine.
You never get to say no. Okay, any other?
Call the question.
Wait, Sylvia. Lance is ready now.
Yes,
Sylvia.
We've also talked extensively since the summer about the Homeland Security new federal guidelines that says we cannot admit international students on I-20s conditionally. And so I didn't know if you wanted to put some kind of statement here so that folks are aware of that. It's actually a federal requirement. Now,
I mean, my argument would be the feds may change that requirement, and then we'll be changing our policy. So it's a federal policy that sticks. We have to follow it. So I don't know that we need to reiterate it here.
That would be my thought.
Will our faculty know that? Or
I
will
think
they
you
know
do need to
that?
put a statement in.
Or how will our students know that?
Most faculty.
I don't know. I mean, I just like to be clear.
Well, I'm reticent of combining the visa process with the academic admission process, because they're two separate processes, in my opinion. And the visa processes change a lot, and the academic process that we choose to admit students to our programs is a separate thing entirely.
So in that case, would we have the same scenario that Dean Evans has, and two letters would be going to a student, one saying they're accepted and the other saying no?
Well, if we have state laws that say we need to send a letter about admission to a teacher education program, then we follow the state law. I think that's the same scenario with introducing visa language into our admission policy.
And actually, so we can conditionally admit international students. They just won't get an I-20 to be able to come here, but they will be able to be admitted to take like an online program or something. So I think it might be confusing if we introduced it in this policy, that language. Because, I mean, it's unlikely that we will have students do that, but that it doesn't, my understanding is we're not prevented from conditionally admitting them. It's just that they're not going to get a visa to come here. So that's something I think we need to make sure that programs are aware of.
But there may be
that's
other
not-
mechanisms to do that.
Right, that's not a policy though, is what, I think what you're saying is that's a federal law, federal regulation that supersedes whatever we would do in this report.
Which is why programs are looking at pathway programs, which is another topic altogether.
But right now, we need to vote on the amendment, right?
Yeah.
Lance is calling.
You're losing your time.
All those in favor of Kirk's amendment as read, would you like it read again? Mm-hmm. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Nay. The nays have it. All right, so
I
we
wish I had voted for it, just for fun.
just have one. All right, so we are now back to the wording in attachment 1.
Except for the
We did strike the last line. Is there any further discussion?
So I know we said that this conditional admission is separate than alternate admission, but it's not. Really. Because if we want to accept somebody with alternate admission, graduate school, and they have a lower GPA, but they have a portfolio that shows all this experience and that we think they are able to do the graduate work, and we recommend to admit them, then the graduate school is not. They're going to do the conditional admission. True? So they are connected.
This policy doesn't address that. This policy change is neutral with regard to that.
No, it's not. Because if we have a student, like he's talking about, that applies, they submit an alternate portfolio, we decide to recommend full admission for them, but their GPA is lower, and we think we've proven, the student has proven that they're able to do the work, then the university or the graduate school is going to give them conditional admission, not full admission.
Yes,
That's
but they're
correct.
going to do that both under the old and the new.
They're already doing it.
So it doesn't matter with regard to
This
this
policy
policy.
is neutral on that.
And what you were told, they will go back and review the alternate admission policy and see if we need to have something like Dean Evans has recommended.
So you can take care of it there?
Well, we're going to get to that after.
Get to that policy.
After we vote on this one, then we'll take up your concerns and entertain another motion to refer something else to committee. Are there any other discussion? You do what?
Call the question.
Call the question. All right, well, in an additional, we've gotten to vote down something that we don't usually get to do. Well, we also have paper ballots for these. My apologies for not having these cut because we talked about the issue.
Since this is not in proper policy format, can you help us understand what implementation date that you're proposing?
Kristen, from your committee, can you address Sylvia's?
Well, I think that this can be implemented with the next advising, the next admission cycle, right?
Well, our admissions is open all the time.
All the time, so-
24/7.
We're doing a really.
If you want me to suggest, I'm suggesting fall 2017, because the new catalog will be published.
I would have it, I would have it.
I have a question.
That's true.
And I'm not doing this just for fun. I did have a request that this be done paper ballot. What? Well, we voted
So we're proposing
why
fall
or
2017.
Is that what we're doing? Thank you. Are we proposing fall 2017? Okay. Thank you, Sylvia.
Friendly, you don't
Oh, you do?
What?
Hey, at least she's not on scratches.
But we need
All right, does everybody have a ballot?
Scratch this now.
And please scratch out the line, the graduate school, the last line, graduate school will not consider appeals of dismissal due to failed conditions of admission. Students will be required to reapply.
I'll take it.
No hanging crab. It's election week, we had to say it.
I don't get a sticker.
Pass them in.
Simplifies it, in my opinion.
Oh, he's just having him a half.
I know what's
Oh, it keeps fingers. You hear me?
Everybody done? Okay. Before we take up the next issue, let's go back to Marge's concern. And Marge, would you like to make your motion now? To refer to.
It's already.
No, this was a separate issue. You were talking about the alternate admission.
Yeah.
In terms, because this, regardless of how this vote goes, this policy is not going to address the concerns that Dean Evans has raised.
Right.
So, do we want to?
Yes, I move that we review at the policy committee the alternate admission
Second.
policy.
Any discussion?
I just have one question, just something Eric just said. If Dean Evans just said that this is state law, right?
It's state regulation, which is different from statute. It's regulatory.
But it's regulatory stuff, but so, would that make it different than following the federal statute?
I'm sorry, say, what's true?
Is it automatic? Because you just said if there's a federal statute that says that's what we'll follow.
Yeah.
If this being state regulation, not state statute, but state regulation, so does that not sort of?
It's not my understanding that the state regulations are legally in conflict with the way that we do admissions, but I think that the concerns about employment and other issues are very valid points. And so I think that it's worth reviewing.
Any other discussion? All in favor of reviewing the issue of alternate admission to the policy committee, referring the issue of alternate admission to the policy committee for review, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We'll do it. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dean Evans. Okay, up next. Oh, we had 19 votes, 19 aye, 3 nay, so our proposed change to conditional admission policy. Okay, next is IP grading. Oh, Kristen? That one is on the form, but the dates aren't filled in because we're not sure yet. So the current policy says that IP grades last a year and then are reverted to an F. The trouble is that they're not being converted to an F, and we have nearly 600 IP grades, some of which are 10 years old or older. hanging around on the books. And one of the reasons they're not converted to an F is the concern that a year is not long enough. So they're not sure. And because faculty aren't prompted or, don't know, then they just hang out there. So the revised policy gives it 3 years, and if we pass this revised policy, we will encourage and say to the registrar, we're saying, as a faculty body, enforce the policy. When the IP grade gets 3 years old, convert it to an F. So that's what you're looking at here. I think we need a motion to... Second. Discussion?
So the registrar would somehow automate that in TopNet?
She'll have to speak to that.
How do you trigger?
We have an error report that will go through and will show us how many.
Oh, okay, but there'd be a normal process to.
Yes, we would like when they're given, if a time frame could be given instead of just saying you've got an IP grade and say, let's say you gave the person 3 years. Well, maybe they don't need the 3 years, so you say you only get 1 year. You let us know that lets us know early that we can go ahead and check it. We would send notification to both the instructor and the student, letting them know you are currently enrolled in a course with an IP grade. If a grade is not received by X date, this course will be changed to an F. We plan on doing that at least a semester in advance. That way you've got plenty of time to either complete your work or get an F.
Is this retroactive?
I really wish it was. Unfortunately, it would be effective starting fall of 17. But anyone that would like to clean up the current IPs that you have on my list, I am more than willing for you to email me and let me know to either A, turn it to an F, or let me know what type of time frame you have for the student to complete the work. I can send those out either directly to the instructors or the dean. You just let me know what you would prefer.
Turn them into Fs, light a fire.
Yeah.
I agree with Sylvia.
You're a bomb thrower.
Get those students moving.
Yes, we get it moving, all right.
And they would take care of about 90.
And if they weren't,
Let them appeal.
the student does to you and was in the process of completing the work, you can submit a grade change card for that. So if you want me to go ahead and turn them to Fs, I am more than happy to go ahead and do it.
And I graduate with an F. When we were discussing this, we were all channeling our inner Sylvia, and she was saying, Sachs tells us that we have to be consistent in the application of our policies, so having all those IP grades hanging around out there is probably not a great thing.
To be clear and fair, we recognize this problem and we're working with the different programs to get those fixed. And so it's not like they're just sitting there with nothing going on.
Yeah.
They're being fixed.
And to the issue of retroactive, so if we adopt this and they go to a 3-year, does that mean all of the current IP then suddenly have 3 years out from that, or only the new one?
Fall of 17.
The new one. They're
We still have to get those taken care of. So
So we're not gonna, this is not gonna solve our backlog. We still have to get the programs to solve the backlog.
Okay, just from the ag department's perspective, because I did talk to a few people, they're very for the 3-year because the 1 year has been problematic.
And I want to point out too that this policy exists in 2 places, so the hope would be that we can implement it fall 17. But it exists in the graduate catalog, so when we pass it here, the graduate catalog can be changed. It also exists in the faculty handbook. So when we pass it here, someone from the policy committee will get on the agenda of the faculty handbook committee, where it will then have to be voted on and taken to Senate, where it will then have to be voted on again. So all of that can be fairly lengthy, and the hope would be that we would get that done by fall 17 so that we can implement this, but that might not be possible.
Can be like at least for those who were 5 years and more not reported, just to drop them to F automatically. I don't think there are students for the last 5 years still in the program. And you're saying 600.
To Eric's point, I think you were notifying departments.
We notified departments several months ago, and they're working through their lists.
And we've got some that we know that instructors have told us, this is going to take a longer amount of time. We've got a separate list of those that have told us that time period, but that still doesn't put a dent in the number that we have.
That's how this came to the policy committee, because the problem came up and
Just one small detail. I presume that the 3 years is non-negotiable, but you said that a person could say, well, make it 1 year or 2 years.
Yes, 3 years is the max, but if you don't want to give the person the 3 years, you don't have to give them the full 3 years.
Right.
3 years is just your max.
Well, let's say you gave someone 2 years, and at the end of 2 years, they had what you thought was a reasonable excuse. Can you extend it back to 3 years?
Yes, because the policy itself is
Okay.
still set at
Just 3 years, okay.
Issue call the question. Okay, all in, well, no, we've got ballots again. Had a request for paper ballots on this one, so.
Before we vote, can I put out a language thing before we vote?
I'm sorry?
Just a language thing before we vote. Under the rationale, I think there's a typo. So if a student enrolls in thesis credits early in the program of student, so I think that should be studied. The last sentence of the rationale has a typo in it.
Oh, I've got it.
Okay.
Sorry, I
And
didn't
this,
have the rationale.
this is not our form, this is the Senate form, and it's incomplete at the moment, but when it goes to the Senate, we'll.
Thank you, sir.
Our voices have
Everybody, we're still here, bro.
We're doing
Yes, ma'am.
Shame on you.
What about the
There's a lot of
Like right now, we're learning about SAS. SAS certified. Yeah, I'll ask talk about the data mining.
It's hard to believe we ain't.
Yeah, that's something for, yeah, that's Kristen for when she was on her.
What's that?
The ballot, no.
I've got to pull off.
Exactly. Ron, you took a meeting off of me by doing this, so thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Okay, moving on to curriculum.
Oh, it's not.
Kirk.
Okay. You have a report from me. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of discussion, a great deal. A lot is a piece of real estate. But there's been a great deal of discussion going on in funding over the last several days and some emails. So I appreciate all those emails. I appreciate
He
it.
appreciated them, not that he was happy to get them.
No, I mean, they were good, they were good stuff. So before we ask you to accept this report, I'm actually going to ask you to pull some things off to the action agenda, we don't approve. The first is if you're looking down the list on if you have your main list with you there under the revised course, EVLD 797. It's a minor thing, but we need to pull that one off to the action. That would actually be an easy one to resolve. It's an implementation date, so I need to, even though I think we've got it resolved, I need to pull CD 486G. I need to pull the MA in Folk Studies 069. I think I've got the resolution on those already. I've been working with Michael. The MS Speech Pathology 0466 needs to be pulled to the action agenda. And the MAE in Adult Education 047 from Jim Burke needs to be pulled to the action agenda. SLP 550, I know. Let me get my notes. It's back on revisor course. SLP 550, action agenda.
I don't have that one. I have 560 and 570.
Sorry, it was just out of sequence because I had it in my
Okay,
notes.
got it.
You have to see my notes, I understand. Sorry about that, Kristen. And then the last item that's pulled off is the very last item, the new certificate program, executive leadership coaching from Tony Norman. Maybe pull that one to the action agenda.
Kirk, just to make sure I have them all.
Yeah, you might want to.
SLP 550, EDLD 797, CD 486G, MA 069, 0466 speech language pathology, and 047 adult education, and the new certificate program.
Basically about half my agenda.
Don't get too intrigued.
Okay, and the IP grading policy, 22 ayes, 0 nays, so we have passed that. Okay, so those items have been moved to the action agenda. Does anyone else have something they would like to pull to the action agenda?
What's the matter?
No.
Don't you have a streak going, Lance? What's one more at this point?
Okay.
Okay.
So then I would like to make the motion that the balance of the consent agenda report that I provided, as well as two information items as well, we approve the balance of that report.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of the consent agenda as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Okay, have it. All right, so now the action.
Let's start with the easy ones. I think we can move through some of them very quickly. SLP 550, the revised course. I make the motion that we vote on this.
That we approve.
That we approve it. We're going to have to make changes.
Second.
Okay.
Okay, discussion.
Yeah. Now, this was the one, I think, Lauren, I think you asked me to pull, was it not?
Well, Marlene did. The issue is very minor, but at 2.8, we've got the name, the new abbreviation, and she said that actually goes at 2.2, and it needs to say abbreviated title as opposed to abbreviation.
So again, it's very minor. It's
Just cut and paste. She said instead of 2.8, it need to go to 2.2.
Right. Everybody understand that, what's going on there?
It's the abbreviated title, though.
The abbreviated title. The title is going to stay the same, but what appears in the transcript, instead of all those letters, is now going to have a word.
SLP counseling.
But that's not.
No, it's the same thing. Okay.
And that's it for that.
Do we need a motion on that, or are we going to bundle all these?
We did.
Okay, so let's vote. That was a friend, then we did motion to approve. Check that.
Okay, so all in favor of the revisions as amended to SLP 550?
Which involves moving the course, abbreviated course up to the 2.2.
Everybody clear what we're voting on?
Yep.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. You guys have it?
Okay.
Thank you.
Now we need to cover CD 486G.
Wait, what about EDLD 797?
The easy ones first.
Oh, we're doing EDLD
Okay, well, no,
first?
the EDLD 797 is the easy one too. Okay, so let's do the EDLD 797. I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Motion, I make the motion.
Second.
That's just an implementation date, needs to be updated to summer of 2017 was the note that I had on that one. That's all it is.
It's not screening somewhere.
That's all it was on that.
All those in favor of the revised course EDLD 797 as amended to implementation date to summer 2017? Be clear? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Thank you.
Okay, so now the next one is the CD 486G. Again, this one's from, well, I'll make a motion that so we can get on the table, so they can second that, please.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second then. This was really a confusion in the language, and Lauren, you're here, so I think the comment that I had was that there was concern, basically it's a course deletion, right? And so somebody was concerned that the required course was also in the IECE Rank 1 156 program. They need to be notified, and Lauren assured me those people have been notified, that has been taken care of, so there's no real concern there.
We even talked about it yesterday at PEC, and they assured me that it was going to happen next month.
Well, I need to say something about that.
Okay.
And it's never been offered. It's just on paper.
Well, we're deleting a course that's a required course in the program. So once this class is deleted, they won't have enough hours in the program to offer the rank 1. Are they going to delete the rank 1?
They're going to submit a revision to their program. They
Okay.
said it was coming through.
They said
So
next
whatever
month.
you all want to do about that, but they say they said they are going to send a revision, so it should be coming through this year. So however you wish to handle that.
But we can't delete the course until we've revised the program, is that correct? So, do we need to delay?
Is it a required course or an optional?
Required.
In my 12 years, I don't ever remember the course being offered.
I know that, but in their
So I
program.
don't know how it's required.
Then we can't
They must-
delete this yet.
Somebody.
They've been doing something else. Because they've had people
So do we
graduate.
have a motion to table this definitely?
Move the table definitely to next
They always
meeting.
get that messed up.
Or until their program, I don't know if they'll be here next week. I wish I did.
Social work.
Well,
So maybe I don't wish.
Do we want to,
Do you need a second?
wait, do we want to say to next meeting or until the program revision has?
Come through.
The program revision.
It doesn't matter. You
So,
don't
so
Table it indefinitely.
I guess we
Except
want
it
it
stays
to
in
be
the
indefinite, so it comes up at the same time as the revising, yes.
Okay, so we have a,
To indefinitely table this.
okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
An effort on us.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded that we table indefinitely the proposal to delete CD 486G. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Okay. The next one I need to talk about and bring up is somebody's going down the list, is the MA in Folk Studies. 416,
Second.
Thank you. Did we get that motion second?
No.
Okay, the issue, so we don't for discussion now, Shannon?
Yes, please, is there any discussion? Sorry.
Search for Michael in the room. The issue there was it's minor changes, we got it sorted out, Colette caught this. Thank you, Colette. Option C in that proposal, there's 3 options for that, and they have I think it's the historic preservation option, I think is what they call it.
It's the final column.
Final column, yes. And what they had there at the top, they had 36 hours, and the collect question is it 36 or 39? And so it really should be 36. If you look down to the non-thesis track, and I had it up and had it right, it did add to 39, and so I called Michael in, and what we're proposing is it should be a friendly amendment to change where it says non-thesis track, it should also say 12, and then down below that where it says 14 hours of electives chosen with the advisor's approval should say 11. So
I
that's
just
the-
missed changing those hours, I apologize.
Right, that's the proposed friendly amendments, because this made it through our committee, we didn't catch that.
Potter College didn't catch it either.
So it's 36?
It's 36. It's always 36, it's not 36 to 39.
Send the money in the bag.
And it does add up.
Okay. Any further discussion? Question? Okay, we have a motion to approve MA in Folk Studies 069 program revision as amended to read non-thesis track 12 hours instead of 15 hours with 11 instead of 14 hours of electives chosen with advisor's approval under Plan C historic preservation option.
Correct.
Everybody clear? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Next one, I'm trying to move through as quickly as I can, is the Speech Language Pathology Master of Science 0466. On that one, I guess I have to wait for a second.
Second.
Thank you. I'll make the motion, I guess. That one is, basically was needed edits to the admission language in a couple different places so that the students understand that all applicants must have a baccalaureate degree from a regionally accredited institution, not just the first option. The way that was worded, if you find that in your packet, hopefully, you can find it without a whole lot of problems. I'm just been talking, haven't found mine. I got it right here. So basically the language was just basically to move the, it kind of said that originally, I'm looking for the original language there.
It's the third bullet.
Well,
The date is
I'm good,
September
thank you.
14th, if that helps find it.
No, I'm looking for the verbiage in the original verbiage. I'm trying to read this from the note, and the note's got some,
Isn't this existing?
yeah, I'm just looking for this one particular bullet.
Oh, okay.
Basically, it said that
Do you want me to read it?
a baccalaureate degree in the profession from a regionally accredited institution or a baccalaureate degree outside the profession in the following courses. And the comment was made that that was not really saying what they intended. They really wanted to say that a baccalaureate degree from a regionally accredited institution in the profession or outside of the profession with the following courses. They were trying to make sure that that the regionally accredited institution was in for both. Okay, so it was a catch in the language is what it was, right? And then also the degree and or prerequisite courses. That's the part that's hard to read.
So in that one, you want to add a regionally accredited institution after the or as well? Is that what you're saying?
No.
No.
Just put the baccalaureate degree from a regionally accredited institution in the profession or outside the profession. So it's regionally accredited regardless whether it's in the profession or outside the profession, right? And in the following and the following courses, and it has the rest then.
Thank you.
And then also the degree and or prerequisite courses
Plan of study.
of the applicant's plan of study when applying to the program. This one really doesn't need to be changed. I talked to Lauren about this one, and it's just a language issue. It's close to it. They're not talking about the program of study. They're actually talking about a plan of study that they require the student to submit.
It's not the old Form C.
Right. There's no form going. This is just something, when they apply, they really do ask them to submit a plan of study, but it's not their program of study that gets approved.
It's an internal document,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So if they're taking prerequisite courses, how do they know that?
That's on the plan. It says, I'm taking at the University of New Mexico in summer 2017. I'm taking this time. This is what I'm enrolled in now. I took this one in summer 2012.
So it's really saying what they're going to complete or is in progress before they show up. It's not really a prerequisite. Well, it is a prerequisite, it's just not part of this program. Okay.
Right.
I see.
Okay with that now?
Okay.
Okay, so really the only change was that first one that I read. I think we're okay on the language there. Okay?
Any other discussion?
Otherwise, fairly minor then.
Okay, we are, motion has been made and seconded to revise program 0466 Speech Language Pathology Master of Science, to change the wording under program admission to read a baccalaureate degree from a regionally accredited institution in the profession or outside of the profession and the following courses, while retaining the language The degree and/or prerequisite courses in communication sciences and disorders must be completed, in progress, or on the applicant's plan of study when applying to the program. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Sylvia?
Just want a clarification before we move on. I know Lauren's probably wanting to get out of here. Is she making those changes, or are you making those changes, so that we know what goes to SEC is correct? Because Colette and I spin our wheels, it seems like, rereading it to make sure that what you guys have approved is actually on the SEC agenda. And so I just want to make sure that we all know.
That's good. Are you making them, or you want me to make them? Before they go to SEC, we'll make sure that these changes, Kirk and I will work together to make sure that the changes have been
And I
made.
don't mind helping provide guidance, but I just want to know how it's going to work, and I'm sure Lauren wants to know before she.
Oh, an extra set of eyes on it would be much appreciated, Sylvia, but Kirk and I will work together. I highly recommend at the next chair of the graduate council that your curriculum committee chair is in the same building with you. Just go down one floor. It works
But
really
not
well.
necessarily me.
I'm moving in with you. Scooch over. Now, your next curriculum committee chair may not recommend that, but for me, it
Okay.
worked really, really well.
I have more.
All right, we're closing in on
I'm
them.
trying to get you guys through as best I can.
Did we vote on that?
Yes, we did. That passed.
The next
Thank
one,
you,
the
Mark.
next one I need to make a motion about is 047, Village Education.
I had a lapse.
So I'll make the motion.
Second.
This one is still somewhat problematic. I had dealt with Jim Berger. He's not in town right now, but I dealt with him via email. And there was proposed changes to be made to what he proposed to the admission requirements. He sent me an email back, basically kind of with a counter proposal. I ran that by Colette, and I was, again, educated about something, which is pretty common nowadays. But basically what he wanted to do was keep pretty much what was suggested, and I won't bore you with all the writing here in terms of what was suggested, but he also wanted to add in something about the minimum undergraduate GPA of 275, which, as Colette pointed out, that's sort of the university standard anyway, or a master's degree with a GPA of 3.0, and then one of the following. He's got some either a portfolio or minimum GRE scores. Colette pointed out to me that the university standard says nothing about master's degree, which I was surprised about. So in other words, if you have an undergraduate degree with a 2.65, and you have completed a master's degree, what we're saying there is that doesn't matter, that they're still looking at the undergraduate GPA.
That's
Anyway,
our policy.
Something else coming.
I'm not voting, we're not bringing that up as a vote, by the way. We're not going to tackle that one.
No, we can't tackle it today.
So I think on this one, what I'm going to recommend that we, I don't think we can resolve that without Jim being here. So I'm thinking that we probably ought to maybe kick this one back, and table it definitely, and let us get back when he gets back in town and work through the issues.
Do you want to refer it back to your committee or table? Which would you prefer?
Just refer it back to us.
I would add a corollary to that. I think, the truth is, I'm not sure where the graduate school is on this right now, but it used to be that if a graduate student entered graduate school with a GPA of under 3.0 as an undergraduate, but they had even a 4.0 as a graduate student for 1 or 2 semesters, they still would not qualify for a graduate teaching assistantship because the criteria for a graduate teaching assistantship was all based on the undergraduate degree.
But if you want to revise the admission policies, go right ahead. Right now, I'm applying them as they're written.
Which you should do.
And I think there's really good room to add some language about graduate work, because that's what we're judging. We're judging success of graduate work.
If they've already completed a master's degree, then let's look at that.
Now, again, we're not voting on it today.
Yeah, don't vote on that.
We're not looking at that.
We're not opening that one today. So I did make the motion to refer it back to my deputy committee.
I second.
We have a motion and second to refer the Program revision
I'm on that.
047 Adult Education back to the Graduate Curriculum Committee for further review. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Yes, Sylvia.
No, but after you vote, I have a comment.
Any opposed? No? All right, we're passed. Yes.
One of the reasons this is not passing is it still has language that says that the GRE that's taken before August of 2011.
Right.
If I'm counting correctly, there are still 14 programs in the graduate catalog after we get this one cleaned up that have that same language.
Right.
And so,
That was one that needed to be removed.
yeah. And
That's 5 years old, isn't it?
but once again, there are still 14 other programs in the graduate catalog that have that language.
But if this body would like to make a motion that the graduate school remove all references to the GRE prior to 2011 in the programs and pass that, I will be
Can you
happy
see
to
that
clean
for
that
another day,
up.
please?
Oh, yeah, another day. Think about that.
But it might be an easy way to clean it up, but we need to make sure the programs are all.
It doesn't matter if they're just going to be on test or not.
I agree.
Yeah, most of
Okay, so they got sent back to my committee, correct?
Most of them are.
Yes.
I'm moving on.
Okay, next one. All right, we're good.
I'm pressing on. Nobody wants
Okay.
to. Okay.
Next.
The next one I'd like to make a motion on is the new certificate program and executive leadership coaching from Tony Norman.
Second.
The issue on this one, there was actually several. Sylvia, did you get a chance to respond to Tony's question?
I did not, I've been,
I did get some.
knee-deep eyeball level with.
Okay, let me just read the concerns here on the executive leadership certificate. The contact person is not faculty in the department. Proposing the certificate was one. We resolved that one with an email. The contact person is going to be Margie DeSander. Thank you. I had to look for the name. Margie DeSander. She's agreed to do that. I have an email from her. The admission criteria is redundant, requiring all graduate programs when necessary should use the default grad school admission. That's fairly easy. We could make an amendment fairly.
But we mentioned that during committee meeting and they said leave it.
They did?
Yes, sir. We did mention that and I think it's in our minutes as well. And don't ask me why they said leave it, but that was brought up during committee.
Okay. Well,
What was the issue?
The admissions criteria is redundant.
permission of the certificate program coordinator is the admissions criteria, right?
That's a requirement of every graduate.
Yeah, and that's what we said during committee as well.
Okay.
And they said they prefer to leave it. Don't ask me.
3, the program coordinator must be in the department housing the certificate. And again, the program, Margie has also agreed to be the program coordinator based on an email. The curriculum note that all required coursework and certificate may be substituted. And if you'll refer to the second page of this, and you look down to where it says curriculum, you'll see some 12 hours total coursework. If you look at point 1, the executive coaching internship must be approved. 2 says similar coursework in all 3 areas may be approved as equivalent by this certificate program coordinator. What I was not clear on was our certificates still held to that 50% rule. And if the 50% rule applies to certificates, then that's pretty much giving them carte blanche, basically to say whatever. So that, to me, was kind of, is that true that they're under the same rules, the 50% rule?
Technically, the 50% rule at the state level does not apply to certificates.
Okay.
However, according to the federal definition of a certificate, we need to be able to assign a SOC code to that. And therefore, there needs to be something in common in that program. We can't apply every SOC code that's available, which is what we'd have to do if you had carte blanche.
Right.
So that's a long answer to your question.
It's okay. I like long answers as long as I don't have to talk. So, and then the last one was the EALR department approval was missing. In other words, the department that was supposedly the originating department, LR, the Educational Administration, Research, and Leadership. And again, the response I got from Tony there was that they had moved stuff through what they call the EDD Leadership Council before, as opposed to that department. I would suspect that now that this Margie has decided to, DeSanders has decided to be the program coordinator and the faculty contact, they could easily run this back through some type of an approval process if that's something we wanted to require them to do. But that's all I have is an email, you have to understand, from from her kind of indirectly through Tony, so I don't have it on the form.
As a member of that department, it would be nice to let our department look at it if it's going to be a certificate program in our department.
All right, so
This is the first time I'm seeing it.
that's an issue probably. Anyway, that's the issues as we had them on the tables. At least, we know at least one, maybe two of those issues are fairly significant. So-
I'd like to suggest that we just say no to this and send it back.
I agree.
It's up for a vote, so we can.
So we have a motion to approve it. We have a second to approve it, and we have a recommendation.
I'm saying I'm voting no.
That the department member has a, in my opinion.
Do we have further discussion on this? There's been concerns expressed that the department is not there. Are we ready for the vote?
Call the question.
All in favor of creating the new certificate program, Executive Leadership Coaching, say aye. All those opposed say nay.
Nay. It's ice cream.
Twice in one
Ice cream
year.
tonight, man.
The nays have it, so the new certificates.
Yeah, you will notify.
Have a beer tonight.
That was.
That's usually how it works. I would notify.
I just did it to light my heart.
I don't mind. That's notified.
Yeah, this is the first.
It should be notified.
Okay.
And with that, I'm done.
All right, do we have any other questions or discussion regarding graduate curriculum matters before we move on? Thank you, Kirk, and your committee for all your service. And I'm sorry, Kristen, thank you and your committee for all of the work on the policy committee. And onward to Lance and the Graduate Student Research Grants Committee work. I emailed out yesterday to you all Lance and his committee's report and recommendation for the funding for the graduate student research applications. Lance?
I'll try to keep it short. We gave everybody full funding except for one application that was withdrawn and one other application where the proponent didn't show up.
Who didn't show up?
Somebody from physics and astronomy, and I'll butcher the heck out of that name. The Letgelby
How are we on money?
We're about halfway through our budget, and we're about halfway through our application process. So
We're in good shape. So thanks once again to our graduate school dean for increasing the amount of money available for these applications.
I'd like to make a comment, and that's just really to amplify that, because I'm thinking that the first time I came to this committee, that Lance and his colleagues were, I would almost say angst-ridden with the report of trying to figure out how to, with great students, with great proposals, sort of how to spread out a very small amount of money, and that stress. Now here we are, and the reason I'm saying this is, from my view, it's an imperfect world, and this is a case where somehow the money was there, there's good students with good projects, and this is just nothing but good. And that doesn't happen all the time, so thank you very much.
Here.
Not to say I miss a meeting, but I miss that meeting. I do when I look at the report, because I love sitting there and listening to our students talk about the work that they're doing, that they want to do, and some of them, their level of enthusiasm. So to have more money for them to be able to do this is just wonderful.
Well, plus serving on committees, when you're handing people money, it's hard to go wrong.
Well, yeah, those are the happy committees to be on. You make people happy. All right, anything else?
I have a question. Does this report come out of the graduate school office, or did you write this report?
I wrote this report.
If you want it in the archive, I need a copy. And that goes for all of the committee reports.
I emailed it to the Graduate Student Research Grant email address, but you needed a copy directly to you.
I'm keeping the archive of the graduate school.
She's
Colette's
The
doing the
minutes,
minutes.
the minutes of the
Okay.
meetings and stuff, and I don't have.
Yeah, Lance sends it directly to the Graduate Student Research Grant email address. You all have in the graduate school.
Yeah, that's the
have
one
it.
that John runs. That's part of it.
Okay, so any committee reports from this committee, if you want them in the archive of the graduate council minutes, I need it. Thank you.
Mine's on the website.
I'll start putting your, send that
We'll
out.
send you
I'm
the
sorry
last
I
one.
didn't get that.
That's okay. Because I'm doing them quickly, like I'll go back to my office tomorrow, write the minutes and stuff. I make Eric send me his reports and stuff to you.
And maybe you should see the applicants, it comes from the same email.
I don't have access to
No,
that.
that's
not
Sean is the
have
only
access
person
to
that
these.
has access to that.
I don't exist.
Okay, so Lance, deadline for next round of applications?
Is, I believe, February 1st.
Yeah, it is.
Talk it up with your students.
And my plan is with the person who didn't show up is just encourage them to strongly to reapply and show up on February 1st, or not February 1st, the review session.
And the one that withdrew the application, you
Okay.
don't know anything about that one.
Which department was that from?
Psychology.
Okay.
I'd like to make one other comment, if I may, and that's just based on that very comment, that through the years, without any details, every once in a while at this university, there's just a little ping of meanness here, or somebody doing something that was just nice. The person didn't show up, and there's a lot of people at this university would say, but you said encourage them to come again even though they didn't show up, and that's nice, and I appreciate that. Go on.
Thanks.
Positive stuff.
Checks in the mail.
I feel
Negative.
Now we're.
Oh, I have. I just thought it was just back there in front of you.
To make up for those 2 negative votes, we voted down to.
Yeah, but we enjoyed those 2 negative votes, didn't we? Variety is the spice here. All right, we are moving on now to report from the Dean of the Graduate School.
Well, actually, it's not my report. I have a couple of, one action item I guess I forwarded to you. And if I can back up and just provide a little context, we've been talking about the idea of pathway programs for international students at the graduate level now for a few months. And the basic idea is that now that we no longer have a conditional admission process, and we need to find some way to accommodate the ability to admit students who don't meet all of our admission standards, just as we do for domestic students by the conditional admission process. And so I appreciate the discussions we've had, and I've been struggling to come up with a way to give us shape, sort of a path forward about how we deal with this. And so last month I kind of outlined in a memo to you a general process that I think you should use as the graduate council to consider proposals for pathways. But I think as part of that, you just want to, I was thinking about this the other day, and as a result of that, even though it's not on your agenda, I circulated a resolution I'd like you to consider, as well as the pathway proposal process that I've also circulated to you. And that is that, if we're going to do graduate level pathways, these are curricula, these are academic items, and you as the graduate council should assert your control over them, just as you do over the other academic items in the graduate curriculum, et cetera. And because graduate pathways don't exist now, and they're not part of our normal, the academic process that we've practiced to this point, I think a simple resolution that says graduate pathways curricula will be handled according to our guidelines. Graduate pathways academic policies will be handled according to our curricula, our academic policy guidelines. I think we should just go ahead and start with a basic statement that this is how we want this process to be handled. And then over the next few months, we can build out what that means in practice. Again, with the idea that it's going to be somewhat unusual compared to some of our other programs. For example, as Molly Kirby astutely recognized last month when I said you should approve a process, when I said you as the graduate council should come up with a process for considering graduate pathways, she said, well, where's your form? And so I'm submitting to you a form for your approval. And it's actually based on the old form for proposing a minor program at the undergraduate level. And you can see that by the typos that are in the form. And essentially, it really just mirrors curriculum proposal processes, forms, curriculum proposal forms that we already have, but also via some of these special items that will just be related to pathways curricula. In an appendix kind of explains to people who want to develop these what you, as the graduate council, will expect them to provide them in order to actually evaluate the curricula that they propose. For example, as we discussed before, a Pathways program is a non-degree program that has special admissions exit standards, so you need to lay those out if you want to propose one. A Pathway program has very likely language remediation as part of the curriculum. You need to explain in detail what that is. And so I try to develop a form that will kind of give a user's guide for both you and anyone who wants to develop a Pathway program. Now, the reason that I'm putting these stuff forward is, first of all, there are several programs that want to do this, and at this point, they don't have any way to propose to you something. One of the proponents of one of these programs is in the room, Dr. Baker, as well as another one from NBA. And I've talked to probably 7 different programs at the graduate level who would be interested in at least considering developing Pathways programs, but they don't know what you're looking for. And so we need to tell them, as well as take ownership of the idea that this is going to be graduate curriculum that you are going to review.
So can I start by just saying I'd like to make a motion that we accept your resolution?
Well, I would like, you need to approve it, or you need to propose it, because I can't propose anything.
Okay, so I'd like to propose the resolution that Eric has written out and given you in the handout form, and then we can ask questions, right?
Yep.
We have a motion and a second to approve the resolution as has been handed out to you all regarding graduate pathways programs. Do we have any discussion?
I have some questions.
Yep.
So my understanding of the federal guidelines is that in order to get the visa approval that you have to be fully admitted into a program.
Yes.
Is a graduate pathway a program?
There's a special kind of program that they call pathway or bridge programs, and this would be one of those kinds of programs. Just as we actually have one of the other members of our current language pathway program here listening in just to see how it's going on, see how things are going on. And these are not degree granting programs. They are not. They don't give an official credential, you might say, that the university awards, but they are special programs that have an admission and an exit process, and we can write visas for those.
Okay, and so if we approve a student into a graduate pathway program, do we also have to at the same time conditionally approve them, admit them into another degree program?
Well,
do they have to be tied together for visa purposes, or could we just for visa purposes put them in a pathway?
Well, my view on this, and this is the reason that there's another thing that I was circulated to you that I don't want as an action item, but I want you to think about as a potential draftable policy about pathways programs, and hopefully maybe propose in the next month or two. And my personal view is that pathways programs should be directly tied to the programs. In other words, that not only will we take responsibility for the curriculum, but programs that propose pathways will take responsibility for the students in those pathways. And so there will be a direct link. And Nick Haught, who some of you may know, just shared with me a new federal guidance that just came out last week, which essentially says you must do that. So it fits with the philosophy, I think, that is a good and fair one for our students, and also what I guess is going to be the regulation that we'll have to follow anyway.
So then my understanding was that in order to offer language remediation, you have to be an accredited provider of English language learning, and we're not. WKU is not.
We are. We are accredited. And the way that regulation works is that you must be an accredited university, and we are via SACS.
Okay.
But there is also sort of different levels of accreditation. For example, Bob's program is accredited by our accrediting body to offer MBAs, but his program also has an additional professional accreditation within his field. And so that's how this works. We're accredited by SACS, and so we can offer language training.
And we don't need the specialized English language.
But we can always go seek that if we so choose.
Okay.
Can I get clarification on something I've been wondering about? The definition of the program I'm still debating that with this moment.
Sure.
Is ESLI by itself considered a program, or does ESLI have to be sort of bundled with something like another Pathways to be considered an actual program?
It's a program in and of itself.
Okay.
And it's the same kind of program, but specifically for language training, that we would be considering for possibly both language training and academic training.
That's all I want to make sure.
So,
Yeah, you can't be admitted to ESLI independent of a program.
That's correct.
They come in tied to
They
a
are.
program.
Well, then really they are tied to a program.
They are.
Yes.
Can I clarify?
Yeah, would you please?
And for those of you who don't know me, my name's Brian Hall, president of ESLI. I've been on campus many years. I know many of you, but many I don't, and I apologize for that. But that's actually not entirely true. We do bring in students that only do what's called English only, that are not tied to a program. They are admitted to the university as an English only student. And I don't know if that's relevant for graduate studies as much because they are largely undergrad. There have been situations where we've brought in a student that is English only to begin their studies, and then they subsequently apply to a graduate program while they're here. 5% of the student population on WKU's campus that are in the ESLI are English only students. It can fluctuate some.
Yeah, that wouldn't really.
Those are all undergraduates. We don't have an
Yeah,
independent.
you don't admit them to graduate
Yeah.
this way. They may convert to graduates. There are students with undergraduate degrees that have admission issues or visa issues, or they may want to get in the country and then subsequently apply. And there are no guarantees with those students.
Then my next question is that the federal law has now been changed to say that if you come into a Pathways program you define, then you're sort of like linked to the, I'll just use ours. You come into a pathway at the College of Business and you're linked to the MBA program, right?
That's correct.
How difficult, let's say that student gets to that Pathways program and they're not able to get all the way through it, and so they kind of want to like, okay, I couldn't make it, I'm not going to be accepted to the MBA program because I really couldn't make it, but I may want to like divert to another how difficult is that going to make for those students then to say, well, maybe I can divert to another
It
master's?
depends on what admission criteria we need to set up for these Pathways programs.
Well, what I'm saying is that linkage doesn't prevent them from sort of decoupling and saying, I'm going.
It would be a separate application process. I mean, you couldn't apply to Bob's MBA pathway program and then apply to some chemistry, then just enter the chemistry program,
Right.
for example,
That's what I was trying to do.
without some second application process.
We've had that, the second application.
It doesn't say this specifically, but I'm thinking it makes sense that these pathways would be approved through our regular curriculum process.
Doesn't it say that?
Oh, I don't know, maybe it does.
So Eric, you're saying a student that says, well, I can't cut it as an MBA, so I'm going to go to graduate school in chemistry and do something easy? No. Just because Kate's here.
Oh, just give it
Is a Pathways program defined someplace? Is it in the graduate catalog defined?
Yeah.
No.
So that would be part of.
This would be in the graduate catalog right here. That's what we talked about.
Yeah, and we do need to develop some sort of policy that describes what a pathway is and what are the basic guidelines for pathways.
But it seems to me it's just very much like an alternate admissions. This is an admissions pathway that gets you in underneath the minimum guidelines.
Well, and again, we would have to, as the graduate council, decide what those guidelines are.
Yeah,
And we have
but
to-
that's what the purpose of this is, right?
Yes. And and again, putting cart before the horse, because we as a body haven't said anything officially at all yet about pathways. My vision, my sort of idea is that we would maintain a 275 GPA and admit students at about a 6.0 IELTS. So just below the language the direct admission language that we require, which is 6.0, but fully admissible on an academic point, from an academic point of view. And that will allow us to devise pathways that are relatively concise. In other words, 1 or 2 semesters rather than 4 semesters.
So they would be fully admitted to the pathway, conditionally admitted to the program, and this was an alternate sort of pathway to admissions that gets you in under the current language requirements that offers English language remediation.
And that would have very specific exit requirements. In other words, academic and linguistic exit requirements that would say you must meet these exit requirements in order to progress into your program of study, the degree granting program. And again, what this resolution is asking you to do is to essentially take ownership of this as a academic item that you should be able to review.
So to the people on curriculum, I would be curious really to hear from them about what they think about this, because this is your baby.
Anyway, actually, it's going to be a combination of curriculum and policy, I think, because some of the stuff we're talking about here is policy and not just curriculum. For example, the stuff about, I know John Baker's got a whole list of some concerns and issues about, what should the GPA requirements be, or what should the IELTS scores be, and that kind of stuff. So, policy and it's going to be a combination, to be honest with you. It's going to be a little bit of both.
And at this point, I'm not asking you to develop a firm policy, but at this point, we don't even have a process by which John can propose a program, much less us debate about it.
We're creating.
So that's why I would like first the resolution and also the proposal form. And then we can discuss this and also begin to formulate policy.
All right, I'm ready to own it.
So you've recommended to approve the proposal, right?
The resolution.
The
resolution first, and then we can discuss this.
We have a motion and a second to approve the Graduate Council resolution on graduate pathways programs before you. Any further discussion? Ready to vote? All in favor of the resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
I will be, what's this matter?
Passes. Thank you.
Okay. And then you wanted to vote on that?
Yeah, and again, this is meant to be a way for
This is.
Voting on this.
So I'll
But I want to make it clear that by the form itself will also give a sense of the kind of information you want a program to provide you as part of the process. So I want to, and it reflects the stuff we talked about at the last meeting, and also the memo that I sent you that said that you want assessment data, you want clear description of the pathway, its curriculum, its exit and entry requirements, you want an assessment for the future as well. And those are the basic things that it will require that, are somewhat unique to a pathway.
So you're asking for approval of the form?
I make a motion that we, to approve the form so we can discuss it.
And just the two-page form where it says application process, not that.
Yes, the thing that I sent around to you as attachment 5, I want that to be a draft that you would consider as a basic policy to begin working with the process. But this is not something I want you to vote on today. I want you to begin.
I thought you were talking
Just the,
one
that's
page.
what I was asking. We're voting
Just
to
the form
approve,
and the appendix.
and are we voting to approve it or to refer it to committee? Because you said you didn't want, what did you not want us to vote?
I'd like to approve it today.
Okay, so do we have a motion?
I made a motion to approve it.
We have a motion to approve the proposed pathways program form
And the appendix is on the back.
and the appendix as included as attachment 5 in the agenda. Do I have a second? Second.
Okay.
Do we have any discussion?
I would like.
I have some hesitation about this. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I would like to start adding, making sure we have college curriculum and graduate. I'd like to start making sure we add, like if it's going to come through us, I want to add the GCCC, the Graduate Curriculum Committee as a line item.
Yes, and if you all could do that, remind within your colleges to add that line in on the form, because Kirk and I have been adding it in, so you could add in a line for Graduate Curriculum Committee, we would appreciate that.
So my concern about approving the form before we look at the application process and the admissions decision is that people might fill out the form before we've looked at the application process and the admissions decision as a policy.
Valid concern.
Shouldn't the form be developed within that?
I'm wondering.
I mean, we develop the process, and then we develop the form to mirror the process.
And maybe I'm misreading, I mean, we've read that alternate pathway, that alternate admissions guideline a couple times today, but isn't this an alternate admissions? And if it is, can we kind of bundle that and see if we can make this pathways fit within that policy guideline and work all that together? So this becomes an example of alternate admissions.
Well, I think that process, alternate admission, is something very different from this.
Oh, yeah?
Because it's, as it's sort of the purpose of the alternate admission process is to have a very wide net in considering virtually any kind of material that an applicant might submit in order to be considered. And for a pathways program, you want to be very clear and have very well-defined admission standards. You don't want to have anything
Yeah,
that's
but
all.
I'm wondering if alternate admissions isn't the umbrella policy, and this is.
Because you're making the assumption that these students come in with a lower standard. Some of these students come in with a very high GPA, but they just need English developed, right?
All right.
And so really, it's not a matter of the GPA. It's a matter of they just need the extra English training. And so that's not really.
And
Okay.
if I could sort of precipitate or sort of peek ahead 1 or 2 months, the reason that I want to start with a proposal form is I don't want you to start approving pathways programs next meeting. But I want you to see what programs are proposing so that you understand what the possibilities are before you make a firm policy. In other words, John's proposal looks very different from Bob's. And they just have a lot of different components that I think are creative and interesting. And I would not want you to approve anything before you have a sense of A, what the policy is, but also B, what people are going to propose. And I think that no matter what, we're going to want proposals to include the elements that I list in this form, such as admission standards, curriculum, et cetera, et cetera. And so, I really think, given that there are several programs and dozens of faculty and staff working on these proposals, we need to give them some sense of what we want to think about.
We appreciate that.
And I'm okay with that, Kurt, if we have this sort of tacit assumption that you're not going to approve anything yet.
Well, I mean, there's no, if you prove it and there's a form, then that doesn't preclude somebody if they know about the form, that we don't have to put the form up yet.
Yeah, that's
How
what I'm
about
saying.
effective date?
Yeah.
Well, and
Say effective summer 2017. Oh.
And the other thing that, the other part of this is that this sort of approval process that I imagine is that you are in charge of voting on the curriculum, but, there's not as much expertise in this room as there would be on the assessment panel that I described to you last month. And so my guess is that as these pathways programs are being developed, they'll also be done in discussions with this panel and with the advice of this panel of people who have taught in pathways programs, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
I made the motion to approve, but would you entertain, let's say, instead of just saying we're going to approve the form, what if we modify the motion, or, however we want to do it, to say that we are approving a draft copy of a proposed form that should always, no matter what we come up with, because I like the idea of going back and defining the process first, that it will include at least these elements.
Okay.
But there could be other things that are going to be added once we get into it, right?
Or we could say it's going to be a pilot, and that gives.
I don't want to use
So
that.
don't use that.
We can get some name on
I have one other concern, and I'm not at all against this. I just am trying to feel out all the boundaries. So if a American native student saw this pathway into an MBA program and decided to take the TOEFL or the ISIL, is this a pathway? So are we creating a dual admissions system, one for international students and one for native students? Could native students use it?
We talked about that.
Those questions.
We've talked about that in the different programs that I've already been meeting with, and other people have been meeting with. And I think that's a great idea, because the idea of having a very, what you might call a curated kind of academic experience for students who are domestic students and would need that kind of first or second or 2-semester experience. That's a great idea,
Not an
but
idea. What's the good idea?
the good idea is what you described, is making a pathway something that can serve underprepared international and domestic graduate students. But I think because that is a gigantic ball of wax, let's start with the simple procedure, or the simple proposition that at this point we need something for international students, and we should start there, and we can always change it.
But are we implementing a discriminatory admissions practice by having one just for international students?
Absolutely not. We have
Okay.
separate admission standards for international students as it is.
Okay, all right.
Just simply because of the fact they have to have an I-20 to, get the I-20.
I'm okay with that. I just wanted to ask.
Okay, so I have two questions about that. Assume the following scenario. We have an international student got admitted to the MBA program, and he was completely admitted. However, we noticed that the language skill is not at all available. Can we put him back on the pathway, the program?
I don't see that we couldn't do that, but we'd have to develop that as part of the proposal for how admissions to a certain pathway, say yours, would work.
And at the same time, like the student, international student I'm seeing in our programs, having problem not only with the language, but also with mathematics. And usually they tell us they waive their, the same courses similar to what they take here, but definitely they are not having any knowledge in those classes, in the English and the mathematics, or STAT 100.
Well, one of the things I'm hoping will also come out of this is that by adopting pathways for international students, we'll also kind of give a little bit of focus to our admission practices. In other words, I think there are times when it's okay to say no to a student, even if we want to work with them. Students who have a very large number of academic deficiencies as well as language problems, I think it's okay to say we don't admit you, rather than bring them into a system that they have a low likelihood of success in. You know, a student that might be missing 3 math courses as an undergraduate plus have poor language skills, maybe they should take some undergraduate courses for a semester before applying for the program. You know what I'm saying?
So we have 2 programs right now basically interested in doing pathways, a pathway program.
Which is the second one besides computer science?
Oh, forgive me, I thought there were, perhaps I'm misinterpreting.
Well, I'm curious, 'cause I'm
No,
curious.
no, it's,
Anyway, go
I won't say, forgive me, but, so clearly you've not heard of any others that are interested.
But anyway, what's your question?
Okay, so now we just have one program that has publicly said they are interested in doing a pathway program. Okay, that's it. No one else has said it. I'm interested in how many programs have come to you and say, we have a lot of international students and we really need something. They may not have said, we want to do a pathway, but at least they've expressed a real concern.
I've personally spoken to and met with 5 programs in that category. I've also met with 2 programs that think it would be really interesting to develop something like this, but not because they're hurting with payments. But because, like, for example, they can see, international students increasing the diversity of their program, plus they have some curricular commonalities that they can use to develop something interesting.
Okay. There's not a stampede.
Well, there is a stampede among the programs that are interested.
Yes.
And because there are certain programs that are quite dependent on international students, and also international students that are at or just below our admission standards with language, and that's a real good demographic for us in terms of finding students. As long as we take, but the key is I want us to, this is my last meeting. This time next month I'm going to be sitting over there for 20 minutes.
Oh, really?
And,
You see one more.
What do you think, anyway?
December 8th.
I'm busy that day.
You didn't tell us.
We'll have a new dean by.
You
But
said you were-
anyway,
That was January 1st.
there are certain programs that are very interested in this, and I don't see a reason, as long as we control the process, to not pursue this.
Okay. Maybe we should vote on the form.
So right now, oh yeah, go ahead.
What if the I-20 issue goes away? We still need pathways?
I like this better than conditional admission. The idea of having a very defined curriculum for international students in their first semester, especially when there are what we would consider, I guess, minor language problems, I think that's a great idea. If any of you have ever studied abroad, it's not just that the academic work, but there's a transition period, and having kind of a very defined experience for a semester is very beneficial, I think. But that being said, you'll have to argue with whoever the next dean is about that policy.
He's gone on that track now.
But yeah, I mean, the reason that, I sent that email out this summer about stopping conditional admission for international students is not that we can't do it academically. It's that we can't offer such students visas. And so, again, I said earlier in the meeting, the academic process of admission has to be separate from the visa process. But when it's completely impractical to admit students conditionally because they can't come here to study, then that's really, it's a logistical.
Anything else? So we are currently voting on just the form in the appendix. Propose a Pathways program, adding in the graduate curriculum committee line for the dates of committee approvals. Any other?
Part of me thinks that this ought to go to the policy committee because it seems like a new policy, and it hadn't been vetted by subcommittee.
I was going to suggest, when we were done voting on the form, that the policy committee take this application process and mission decision and vet that part of it. So I suppose we could vet both of it, but it doesn't help the programs who want to get started.
Because the goal here, Eric, if I'm correct, if I'm understanding it correctly, is to get a draft form out there for programs who would like to propose this, to have something to work from, and that in the process of utilizing the form, it initiates the process that we can take up after this vote, whether or not to refer the first part of attachment 5, the application process, to policy committee, and that this form can then be revised basically according to what Kirk was saying, if there may be more added to it later, but this at least gives us a starting point. And that's why you would like to have the form.
I think Kirk's idea is a good one, in that what you're talking about is that this is a good place to start, and that we may want to add things to it. I think if you sort of say that, make a motion that this is the draft proposal form that we plan to work on associated with the Pathways program, that's adequate. That means that we can start going around.
That will at least include the components, at least include that, but it may include more.
Yeah. And I think that that's a great idea.
I made that motion.
We're revising the motion to approve the draft Propose a Pathways program form with the change to the graduate curriculum committee line for dates and committee approvals, to approve this as a draft form subsequent to, or just as a draft form, just anything.
So how is a draft form different from another form? I mean,
It won't be made production yet. It won't come through, we would not accept one coming through committee yet.
Okay.
And we'll take it at policy committee for vetting.
Okay.
It will simply be a guideline for programs to initiate when then we get, the next time when we actually formally, we can, if we're voting on the draft version now, which would imply, I think, that we would vote on the final version before it could actually go to curriculum committee. Right. So
Who's going to work on the final version?
And that'll be the next thing we take up.
I'll work with policy committee to help revise it as you see fit.
The conference is about to end.
Putting on this as a draft form. Very clear? All in favor? Say aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you very much.
So then,
Now you own it, all y'all.
so then the next point goes to the first part of attachment 5, the application process.
So I'll move that policy committee take that whole ball of wax and feed in the draft form. Our next policy meeting will be at 1 o'clock on December 8th, if anyone is interested in coming for that discussion.
And,
When's that gonna be? When's that gonna be again? When's your next committee meeting?
No, December 8th at 1 o'clock. We meet the hour before grad council.
and just
And it's in the conference room on the first floor.
to recognize that I have passed around 2 documents that Dr. Baker had provided that sets out some additional information in terms of his concerns and ideas related to the Pathways program. So this is something that obviously the policy committee would take into consideration. But it's also opportunity for you to review. Dr. Baker, you've sat here patiently through all of this. Is there something you would like to say at this point?
No, I talked to the policy committee. That's what he's like.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And there for the rest of your report.
Oh, no, I don't have anything else to report, except that what I circulated to you earlier, with some information items. Any questions?
I'm gonna.
Oh, I would just repeat what I said in the very first item. All of you should attend this forums, and you should fill out those forms about the applicants for the graduate dean position, because that's what that's what we use to evaluate the candidates by the provost.
So I have a couple of things related to that. Those forums are at 11:30, 10:30?
10:30 to 11:30 on
Monday of next week, Tuesday,
and Thursday, and 10:30. They are the 14th, 15th, and 17th, which is Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday from 10:30 to 11:30 in Weatherby 227. Which one's 227? Is that this room? That's not this room.
That's this room.
Okay, I've been putting the wrong.
So my comment, I'm not going to be there. So my only comment about this is I noted that none of the candidates have served on graduate council. And when Eric transitioned into the interim dean position, he had served on graduate council for a long time and knew the process. So I think it's really important for us to talk to these candidates about what grad council does, what purposes we serve. That's my only pitch.
Might be better to keep them in the dark.
Surprise them when they get in there.
And the forums specifically for graduate council are the ones from 10:30 to 11:30. And Connie Foster, the chair of the search committee, emphasized that graduate council has an important role to play in this process. So please, if you can, be here for those. If you can't, the open forums are on those same days at 1:30 in Helm 100. If you cannot attend the graduate council forum, but you have questions for the candidates, if you want to submit them to me, I'll be happy to make sure that they get asked, and then reply back with you. Excuse me, no, I do not tweet. I am not concise enough to tweet. So, but if you have questions, please let me know, but please engage in the process. We do need to approve the graduate faculty status, the list. I remember to attach it this time. The attachment 4 is the graduate faculty report. I need a motion to approve. Second?
Second.
All those any questions? All those in favor of the graduate faculty report as included in your agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Right, anything else here? This is really your last meeting? You're not going to be at December 8th meeting?
I think I'm busy. Seriously, I think I'm busy tonight. But I'm not sure.
You did a great job, Eric. With that, I move we adjourn.
Okay, are there any announcements before? Any second to the adjournment?
I do have one
One
announcement.
announcement